I gave my best friend since childhood $250,000 to invest for me. He said it would double in 6 months. 3 weeks later his phone was disconnected and his apartment was empty. My name is Daniel Cortez and I grew up in Toledo, Ohio, in a small brick house 2 streets over from a boy named Kevin Marsh. We met in 3rd grade fighting over a kickball and somehow that turned into 20 years of friendship. Kevin was the kind of guy who could talk his way into anything. He worked in sales for a mid-sized insurance company and always had a new scheme he was excited about. I worked as an electrician, steady hours, good union pay, nothing flashy. I had spent almost a decade saving money, working overtime, skipping vacations, because I wanted to buy a house outright someday and never worry about a mortgage hanging over my head. By the time I turned 32 I had $250,000 sitting in a savings account, and I was proud of every dollar of it because I knew exactly what it cost me in early mornings and missed weekends. Kevin started talking about trading a year before everything happened. He said he had a system, something with options and swing trades, and he showed me screenshots of accounts that had grown fast. I was skeptical at first. But Kevin wasn't some stranger online. He was the guy who drove me to the hospital when I broke my arm at 19. He was the best man at my wedding. When he sat across from me at our usual diner and said, "Danny, I would never touch $1 of your money the wrong way, you know me," I believed him, because I did know him, or thought I did. The betrayal did not happen all at once. It crept in slowly, the way most betrayals do. I wired him the money in April, all $250,000, into an account he said was set up specifically for trading. For the first month he sent me updates almost every day. Screenshots of green numbers, voice messages saying things like, "Bro, we're already up 8%, I told you." I remember showing my wife Rachel one of the screenshots and her frowning at it. "Why isn't the money in an account with your name on it too?" she asked. "He's my best friend," I said. "It's fine." By the second month the update slowed down. I texted him one afternoon asking how things looked and he took 6 hours to respond, which was unusual for him. When he finally called he sounded distracted, talking fast, saying the market had a rough week but it would bounce back. I told myself markets go up and down. I had read that much myself. But something in his voice felt different, thinner somehow, like he was reading lines instead of talking to me. By week 10 I stopped getting screenshots altogether. I called him on a Tuesday and it went straight to voicemail. I called again Wednesday, same thing. Thursday I drove to his apartment complex after work still in my uniform, grease still under my fingernails, and I knocked on his door for 10 minutes. A neighbor stepped out and told me the unit had been empty for almost 2 weeks. She said a moving truck came early one morning before anyone was really awake. I stood in that hallway with my phone in my hand refreshing his contact page like it would suddenly show me something new. It didn't. I called Rachel from the parking lot and my voice cracked saying his name. "He's gone," I told her. "The apartment's empty. Kevin's gone." That night I opened my banking app for what felt like the 100th time, watching a balance that read $0 in an account that used to hold my entire life savings. I sat on the edge of my bed until almost 3 in the morning trying to understand how someone I had known since I was 8 years old could do this to me. I kept replaying our conversations, searching for a moment where I should have known, a tell I missed, a warning sign I ignored because I trusted him more than I trusted my own gut. The next few weeks were the hardest of my life. I filed a police report, but the detective told me these cases are difficult, that Kevin had likely moved the money through several accounts before disappearing, and that finding him, let alone the money, could take months if it happened at all. When I told my parents what happened, my mother's first response was not comfort. It was, "How could you give him that much money without a contract, Daniel? Didn't we raise you smarter than that?" My older brother Marcus was worse. He called me reckless on a family phone call, said I had always been too trusting, said Rachel and I should have known better than to gamble our future on a guy who sold car insurance for a living. Nobody asked how I was sleeping. Nobody asked if I was eating. They just wanted to know how I let this happen, as if grief needed a scapegoat and I was the only one available. I stopped going to family dinners for a while. I stopped answering calls from anyone outside of Rachel. I started picking up extra electrical jobs just to keep my hands busy, wiring houses until midnight some nights because being alone with my thoughts felt unbearable. Rachel found me one evening sitting in our garage in the dark, not doing anything, just sitting. "You didn't do this to us," she said, kneeling down in front of me. "He did. And you are allowed to be angry at him instead of yourself." That sentence cracked something open in me. For weeks I had been carrying the shame like it belonged to me, like trusting my oldest friend was some kind of personal failure. But sitting there in that garage, I realized the shame belonged entirely to Kevin, not to me. I decided that night I was done being quiet about it. I was done letting embarrassment keep me from fighting for what was mine. I started digging on my own. I pulled old texts, old Venmo transactions, old photos with location tags, anything that might help build a timeline. I reached out to a financial fraud attorney named Priya Anand in Columbus who specialized in cases exactly like mine. She told me most people give up too early because the process is slow and expensive, but she said my paper trail was better than most clients she saw. I decided I would not be one of the people who gave up. It took 9 months. 9 months of subpoenas, bank record requests, and finally tracing Kevin to Charlotte, North Carolina, where he had opened a new account under a slightly altered version of his name using his middle name as a first name. He had used part of my money as a down payment on a condo. Priya helped me file both criminal fraud charges and a civil suit to recover assets. When the police finally arrested him, I did not feel joy. I felt something quieter, something closer to relief. I did not get all $250,000 back. Through the settlement, the seizure of his condo, and a payment plan the court ordered, I eventually recovered a little over $190,000, spread out over 2 years. It was not everything, but it was enough to rebuild. The hardest part was not the money. It was learning that loyalty and trust are not the same thing, and that loving someone for 20 years does not mean they will not destroy you the moment it benefits them. My family eventually apologized, awkwardly, the way families do, my mother bringing over a casserole instead of saying sorry out loud, my brother texting me a game score like nothing had ever happened between us. Kevin wrote me one letter from jail. I never opened it. Some doors, once they close, are better left shut. These days when people ask me about trust, I tell them this. Trust the actions in front of you, not the history behind you. Kevin had 20 years of history with me, and it meant nothing the moment greed took over. I rebuilt my savings slower this time, more carefully, with contracts and separate accounts and a lawyer's phone number saved in my contacts just in case. I still believe in loyalty. I just learned the hard way that loyalty without accountability is just another word for blind faith, and blind faith is exactly what cost me everything.